Yo, hey guys, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite movies. Yes, the list week will start tomorrow. I promise you. I know I am late to the hype train here, but I'm still finalizing the lists and I still have a couple more album reviews and movie reviews and one more TV review to go. Mr. Robot season 4. Uh yeah. I'm going to do another movie review. Quite possibly my third last or second last movie review of the decade. So this is going to be a good one. I am going to review 3 movies again. Yes, I've watched a lot of movies this month. Way more than like any other months this year and in my life in general. But yeah, I'm going to be talking about Denis Villeneuve's Prisoners. I'm going to talk about Mikhail Haneke's Amour and Terrence Malick's The Tree of Life. Let's start off with the big one, Prisoners by Denis Villeneuve. Literally one of my favorite directors of our generation right now, ever since Polytechnique and Incendie, which I have given a full review on. He had churned out more classics, more classic movies, and great movies at least. I mean, we have Enemy, of course, we have Sicario, which is a very great, intense film. We have Arrival, which is incredibly intelligent, and we have the stunning, visually mind-blowing Blade Runner 2049. And I think next year he's gonna come out with Dune. If there's one person who can, receive the torch that Jodorowsky was carrying when he was creating Dune, it's Denis Villeneuve. I mean, he has the potential, but I digress. Back to Prisoners, where Denis Villeneuve sort of tries his hands on murder mystery, crime thriller, similar to the ones that David Fincher loves to make. And the plot basically goes like this. Hugh Jackman, aka Mr. Dover, and Mrs. Dover has a son and a daughter, little daughter. And on a Thanksgiving day, the entire family went to another family, played by Viola Davis and Terrence Howard as the mom and dad, respectively. And then we have their daughter and their little daughter. And these two little daughters, these two little girls, they went out of the house after the Thanksgiving dinner, and then they're gone. They're missing. And that's basically the movie. This movie also involves a police officer played by Jake Gyllenhaal. And so we have Hugh Jackman's character, Mr. Dover, and Jake Gyllenhaal's character as the officer trying to figure out who abducted these little girls and where they are and are they alive, and the plot thickens. Watching this movie is like watching an entire season of True Detective, but all crammed into 2.5 hours. And that also kind of explains why this is an incredibly depressing movie. I mean, yes, the plot itself is already really tragic, but the tone itself, the color palettes, the very dim lightings, the fact that it's always raining and it's always cloudy in the movie, the tone of the movie is just depressing, grim, tragic. Apparently, the cinematographer, the DP of this movie is Roger Deakins, one of the best DPs in the world, if not the best, which sort of explains why some of the shots in this movie are beautiful, especially how he plays with lighting. But back to the plot itself. The plot thickens and we see different, suspects, and we see the protagonists as well. I mean, we have Mr. Dover just getting super duper angry because, his daughter's missing, and he gets so angry that about his daughter being missing, he starts to cross the line and do something morally ambiguous, which is another thing that I really like about this movie, is that moral ambiguity is a theme being explored in this movie. Also, the performances are amazing. Terrence Howard is amazing. Hugh Jackman, one of his best performances. Same goes for Jake Gyllenhaal. And then we have Paul Dano playing one of the suspects. He's actually really underrated. I mean, after his very intense performance of his milkshake being drank in There Will Be Blood, I mean, second runner up, or first runner up, I should say. And yes, this movie is large, it is huge, and it can be kind of slow sometimes, but once in a while, an action packed scene takes place. And when that scene takes place, it's not exciting and energetic and fun, it's still dark and grim. But still, action takes place. It gets bloody, it gets violent, it gets weird and strange and twisted. Again, reminds me a lot of True Detective. And yeah, the ending. Originally, I thought the ending is gonna be like ambiguous, but I'm really thankful that it isn't ambiguous. It sort of leads into another scene that should have happened, but never shown on screen. So at least I'm cool with that. But other than that, I think this is a totally solid crime thriller murder mystery movie, and one of the best one of the decade as well. I mean, of course David Fincher does it really well as well, but Denis Villeneuve does it really well as well. I mean, with his own style, of course. Feeling a 9 out of 10 on this movie. And I guess this movie could be worth watching, mind blowing, worth watching. Okay, second movie I'm going to be talking about is Amour by Michael Haneke from München, Deutschland. Even though Michael Haneke is a German director, this movie is in French for some reason. Yeah. And Amour means love, and this movie actually won Best Foreign Film in the Oscars that year. So, Michael Haneke, also one of my favorite directors of all times, the director of Caché, which is this really riveting, gripping, paranoia-inducing thriller. We have The White Ribbon, as well as Funny Games. Both Funny Games. I mean, he made Funny Games and a movie in German, and then like many years later, he remade Funny Games shot for shot in American English, and it's still good. But yeah, anyway, Michael Haneke, Amour. To summarize this movie, I have 3 words: getting old sucks. But of course, given the duration of this movie and the director, it's kind of more complicated than that. While the plot doesn't thicken more emotionally, it's way more powerful, way more impactful, and again, depressing. Because this movie is about getting old. Basically, 2 old people, couples, French. They are dying. And we have the wife who had a stroke, but the husband doesn't know it, and when he does, he decided to help her, give her surgery, but the surgery didn't work, leaving her paralyzed, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. The wife realized that she was a burden to her husband, and the movie really ended off extremely tragically. And yeah, it's a slow burn. It's not eventful at all. It can get very almost quiet sometimes. I mean, there isn't a soundtrack in this movie, but whenever there's music, it's actually music from within the story. That is the piano, which is really nice. Gives this movie a really, I guess, raw feel. But yeah, I feel like I would have enjoyed this movie more if I'm old, or at least if I'm older. I'm still like 17 right now, and I can't really relate to this movie too much because I know that I'm not dying, I think. I mean, putting my personal life aside, this is a fantastic movie. The screenplay is great. The movie looks good. The performances, especially by Emmanuel Riva, is heartbreaking. And we also get to see both sides of the husband and the wife throughout the entire movie, and the way their viewpoints change and their emotions change. And yeah, feeling an 8 out of 10 on this movie. It's a movie worth watching, and worth being sad too. But our third movie takes the whole concept of death and mortality to a new angle, and that is The Tree of Life by Terrence Malick. So, The Tree of Life, this movie. It's one of the most unique movies I've ever seen. It's not very eventful if you're the kind of person who goes to a movie expecting some really interesting plot, characters to root for. You're not going to find it here. This movie is actually about, well, it's about two things, but two related things. First of all, in the 50s, we have Mr. and Mrs. O'Brien, played by Brad Pitt and Jessica Chastain. They have three sons. One day, one of the sons passed away. And we sort of see what happened before that, what happened after that, the parents mourning, and that's basically it. But sometimes this movie would jump to the present day, where one of the sons, the older brother, sort of grew up, played by Sean Penn, who is now an architect who sort of feels guilty for, I guess, ignoring his parents and sort of not taking care of his brother who passed away. And between these two things, we would also get some really ethereal, life affirming sort of world expanding visions, which I will talk about a little more, but that's basically the plot. And while it seems a little pretentious, I don't think it is completely without substance. I feel like this movie has a meaning, and the meaning is actually incredibly obvious, and that is everybody goes through, life and death. Death is always going to happen. It's always the end of life. And just because one person died, I mean, yeah, it sucks for the people around that person. It's really not that it's nothing in comparison to what's happening in the rest of the world, but it's a part of the universe. Someone dying, it's really what's supposed to happen, but it's not fate, but it's just the world doing its own thing, and nature doing its job, if that makes sense to you. And that's basically what I think this movie is trying to convey. Strange, because earlier this morning I attended a funeral of an elementary school classmate of mine whom I haven't spoken to for 6 years, and to think that this is all a part of the process of nature, and all part of the universe's greater scheme. While it doesn't belittle this incident, I certainly don't think it's that horrifying, but it's still very mortifying nonetheless. Anyway, I digress. Back to this movie. This movie gives off this very euphoric feel to it, because the DP of this movie is actually Emmanuel Lubezki, who's also one of the best DPs working right now. I mean, he's the man behind the cinematography of Birdman by Alejandro González Iñárritu, where the entire movie is seemingly one shot, even though, of course, it's not. And he's also behind Children of Men by Alfonso Cuaron. Also extremely well shot. And then we have this movie where his cinematography combines with Terrence Malick's, uh, you know, style, his, very natural, a little shaky, handheld style, not putting the characters in position necessarily, but always moving the camera, always looking at the sky, at the trees, at the sunlight, always looking at the lamps. Both styles combine to give off this very dreamy, euphoric, but also at the same time life affirming vibe. Some shots in this movie are so beautiful, it takes your breath away. There's even a little sequence in this movie where we basically see the entire history of life on Earth, basically. I mean, after the Big Bang, we immediately jump to dinosaurs, which, of course, if you know history, there's a huge gap between Big Bang and dinosaurs. And then between the Big Bang and the dinosaurs, this is like humans. Humans is just a little bit. But again, I digress. The dinosaur sequence, I don't really care for that all that much, even though it's beautiful and even though I know it conveys a very special message. Uh, but these scenes plus the vision scenes towards the end actually reminds me of 2001: A Space Odyssey, except in 2001: A Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick talks about something that's way larger in scale and from a way bolder standpoint. It's about human evolution. It's how the world, how the universe works. But Terrence Malick explores how nature works and how the universe is doing its own thing, but from like the point of view of a small family, and that's how he does it, looking at the big from the small. And I mean, that little wooden frame at the end of the movie reminds me a lot of the monolith in 2001. So you can see the parallels. And yeah, I like the movie. I certainly enjoyed watching the movie. The experience is holistic. Um, Not for everyone though. Not for everyone. I'm feeling an 8 out of 10 on this movie as well. And I think it's a movie worth watching. So, have you seen these 3 movies? From 1 to 10, how much did you rate them? Like if you like them, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching. And if I have 2 more movie reviews to go, I will be reviewing Black Swan and The Lighthouse.